To daring prospectors, driven by the lure of gold, stumbled upon a treasure far beyond their wildest dreams, the very life of the exquisite Lady Serafina, seized by the ruthless outlaw, Vulture King Silas. This tyrant believed himself above all law, but he hadn't reckoned on the enduring spirit of honor and empathy that could still flourish, even in the untamed Wild West. An unforeseen alliance with former adversaries, coupled with the audacious courage of 10 forgotten women of the town, irrevocably altered the course of this saga. Witness how justice ultimately prevailed, and why true wealth is measured not in gold, but in the willingness to sacrifice for others. Watch to the very end, for the story's dramatic conclusion will stun you and impart profound wisdom. And remember to subscribe and like so you don't miss our upcoming narratives. The Wild West of the 1880s offered no sweet serenades, but was a harsh, dusty, unforgiving arena where every single coin was wrested with the same savage intensity. Coyotes fought for scraps. Ethan Eagle-Eye Vance and his steadfast companion, Jake Dynamite Cassidy, knew this grim truth intimately. Their monikers were steeped in irony. Ethan earned his for an uncanny knack of evading trouble, as if blessed with a sixth sense. Jake, for a fiery temper that often sparked confrontations. More than just friends, they were brothers bound by shared destiny, their union forged not just by empty pockets, but by an unyielding thirst for adventure that propelled them from one god-forsaken settlement to the next. Ethan stood tall, broad-shouldered, with a rugged, weathered face and piercing blue eyes. He was a man of few words, preferring keen observation and careful thought before action. His trusted Colt single-action Army revolver, always gleaming, served as his sole reliable ally. Jake, in stark contrast, was a short figure with a perpetually bristling mustache and a cunning glint in his eye. He spoke swiftly, acted on impulse, and held an unwavering belief that a vein of gold awaited him just over the next distant ridge. His venerable, battle-scarred double-barreled shotgun was his preferred instrument for resolving any predicament. Their most recent gamble, the pursuit of the fabled Silver Canyon, had culminated in utter failure. They limped back to Reed Creek with empty saddlebags and the bitter sting of realizing they had, once again, chased a phantom rumor. On the dusty main street, they were greeted not by welcoming sheriff, but by the scowling, suspicious saloon keeper, who demanded immediate payment for their week-long stay. "Not today, old man Smith," Jake chuckled, patting his empty holster. "Let's talk about the gold we're about to strike." Smith, a man whose face seemed chiseled from granite, was in no mood for jest. He ejected them from his establishment, threatening that their next encounter wouldn't be with his words.
"I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, so you will help me in motivation to make such great stories for you, and I will see that you like them. Enjoy watching, everyone."
But with his fists. In that moment, Jake, feeling both humiliated and enraged, proposed a wild scheme to Ethan, one that might just unravel all their woes. "We're heading to Graves Creek, Ethan. I heard there's a hidden cache in an old, abandoned mine, somewhere beyond the canyon. They say it was left by bandits who were wiped out during a bank heist." Ethan, though inherently skeptical of such tales, reluctantly agreed. They simply had no other viable option. Graves Creek was a phantom of a town. Its streets were choked with dust, its houses stood vacant, and its fences sagged, tainting a truly desolate scene. Upon their arrival, they discovered they weren't the only ones drawn to this spectral place. At the mine's entrance, they were met by a tall, grim figure cloaked in a tattered leather duster. His name was Marshall Iron Blake, a bounty hunter of fearsome renown. Beside him stood his silent companion, Shadow Walker, an indigenous man whose eyes, sharp as an eagle's, meticulously tracked their every move. "What are you boys doing here?" Marshall asked, his voice a low rumble. "This is our territory. We're after the same thing you are," Jake shot back, a challenge in his tone. "But we're not planning to share." A fierce animosity ignited between them. Marshall and Shadow Walker stood as stark contrasts to the two prospectors. They were taciturn and grave, while Ethan and Jake were boisterous and carefree. This encounter sparked a powerful dislike that intensified with every passing moment. Marshall saw them as two foolish youths who had blundered into the wrong fight, while Jake viewed Marshall as arrogant and domineering. Their conflict wasn't merely over riches, but a clash of personalities and core principles. Marshall, eager to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, offered them a peaceful exit. "This is your final warning. Clear out while you're still in one piece." Jake, ignoring the implicit threat, bolted towards the mine entrance. Ethan, seeing his friend's reckless dash, couldn't abandon him, and they both plunged into the darkness. Inside the mine, gloom pressed in, the air was heavy with dampness, and the scent of decay hung thick. They were convinced they would unearth gold that would sweep away all their troubles. Yet, as they reached the tunnel's end, instead of a glittering fortune, a horrifying tableau awaited them. On the damp floor, bound and sold, sat a woman. She was no common captive, but a lady of evident grace. Her gown, though torn, was fashioned from rich silk. Her hands and feet were cruelly tied, and a locket bearing an unfamiliar crest hung from her neck. Beside her, a man stood grinning, one of the notorious outlaws they'd heard whispers about, and he had no intention of sharing his prize. In that chilling moment, Ethan and Jake realized their greed had led them directly into the jaws of hell. Thoughts of gold vanished. Their sole imperative now was to liberate this woman. But their paramount challenge wasn't just the captive woman, it was also their long-standing adversaries. Marshall and Shadow Walker, having trailed them closely, suddenly materialized at the tunnel's mouth. Jake and Ethan, caught off guard, were paralyzed. They were trapped. The true villain of this tale was not merely an outlaw, but a man utterly devoid of reverence for human life. His motive was starkly simple. He intended to sell the woman for a hefty ransom. He knew she hailed from a powerful family, and that her liberation would command a fortune. Yet, he failed to account for one crucial truth, that even in this savage world, there still remained individuals for whom honor and dignity outweigh any sum of gold. Ethan and Jake, though driven by avarice, would never countenance harm befalling a woman. Their moral compass transcended their financial aspirations. With each tick of the clock, the tension in the air thickened. The outlaw, his knife pressed against the woman's throat, was the foulest scum to roam the Wild West. His name was Rattler Pete, infamous for his insatiable greed and utter lack of conscience. Madness gleamed in his eyes. He was prepared to commit any atrocity to seize his prize. "Drop your weapons, or she dies," Rattler Pete snarled, his voice echoing eerily through the tunnel. Ethan and Jake exchanged a quick, desperate glance. On one hand, they harbored a deep loathing for Marshall and his stoic companion, Shadow Walker. Yet, in this perilous instant, they were the only ones who could offer any hope. This was a turn of events they had never anticipated. Their pursuit of adventure and riches had snared them in a deadly trap, and now they faced a grim choice: their simmering feud or the life of a stranger. In that critical moment, Marshall did the unexpected. He slowly lowered his revolver. "We're not here for gold," he stated calmly. "We came for her. For the lady. And we are prepared to stand with you to save her." Rattler Pete let out a harsh, rasping laugh, like grinding metal. "Unite? Two piles of cowdung trying to save one woman. You've lost your minds." But Marshall paid him no heed. His gaze was fixed directly on Ethan. "Her name is Serafina. Her father is a powerful landowner in Texas. I am bound to return her alive." Intrigue began to flicker. Ethan and Jake had never witnessed a bounty hunter display any emotion beyond cold indifference. There was a raw sincerity in Marshall's words that compelled them to believe him. They began to understand that beneath his rough and impassive exterior lay a man of unwavering principle, who undertook his grim work not solely for profit, but for a profound sense of justice. Shadow Walker, who had remained silent throughout, nodded in solemn agreement. His dark eyes, unwavering, held no fear as they tracked Rattler Pete, only an unyielding resolve. Meanwhile, Rattler Pete, sensing their momentary distraction, lunged forward with a sudden movement, but Jake was quicker. He snatched his shotgun and fired a thunderous blast into the wall just above the outlaw's head. The deafening roar of the shot momentarily stunned everyone. Rattler Pete, disoriented, released the woman and scrambled to flee. But Marshall was already poised. He hurled his knife, which whistled through the air and embedded itself squarely in the bandit's leg. Rattler Pete crumpled to the ground, writhing in agony. The woman, freed from her cruel bonds, collapsed into Ethan's embrace. She was terrified, but miraculously unharmed. Her name was Lady Serafina Forrester, and her eyes were brimming with heartfelt gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling as she fought back tears. "You saved my life." As they emerged from the mine, Jake, unable to resist, posed a question to Marshall. "So, you weren't after gold, after all?" Marshall shook his head slowly. "Gold is mere dust. But honor is what sets a man apart from a beast." That pronouncement resonated deeply within Ethan and Jake. They had always believed that everything in this world could be quantified by money, but this harrowing experience had revealed a profound truth. Some things held far greater value. They spent the remainder of the day meticulously planning their next move. Marshall recounted the full, grim truth of what had transpired. The outlaws they had unwittingly stumbled upon were not mere robbers, they were part of a vast, sinister network engaged in kidnapping and extortion. Lady Serafina was their latest victim. Their vile scheme involved selling her at a nefarious auction in Mexico. Marshall had been hot on their trail, painstakingly piecing together clues, and was close to unmasking the entire syndicate. Yet, he possessed no concrete intelligence about their hideouts beyond the general vicinity. Rattler Pete, whom they had bound and left in the mine's depths, was their primary contact. The gang had planned to rendezvous with him to complete Lady Seraphine's transfer before vanishing. Now, with their elaborate scheme in ruins, they would undoubtedly be scouring the land for her. Marshall understood they were in grave peril. "We must reach the nearest settlement, Canyon Ridge, and seek the sheriff's aid," he declared. "And we have but a single day to achieve this." Jake erupted in fury. He was willing to gamble his life for gold, but not for the rescue of a woman he barely knew. "Why should we bother? We were supposed to find gold, not get tangled in this mess." "Because it's the right thing to do, Jake," Ethan countered, his voice firm. "Because we cannot permit any harm to befall her." Ethan's admiration for Marshall swelled with every passing minute. This man, who had initially seemed so cold and devoid of feeling, had revealed himself to be honorable and extraordinarily brave. He was prepared to risk everything to save a complete stranger. Ethan understood that for Marshall, this was more than a mere assignment, it was a mission, imbued with profound meaning. Jake, witnessing his friend's unwavering resolve, finally relented. Their journey to Canyon Ridge was fraught with peril. They were forced to evade the outlaws who, as anticipated, had begun their relentless pursuit. The gang, spearheaded by the merciless Vulture King Silas, were seasoned killers, and they were not inclined to retreat. Vulture King Silas, witnessing the utter collapse of his meticulously laid plan, was consumed by a blinding rage. He swore a solemn oath to hunt down and eliminate every soul who dared to obstruct his path. Along the treacherous path, they began to forge a deeper understanding of one another. Ethan and Jake recounted their past exploits, their fervent dreams of striking it rich with gold. Marshall, in turn, unveiled fragments of his own life, sharing how he had become the formidable bounty hunter he was. He had once been a sheriff, whose family was tragically torn from him by the very kind of criminals he now pursued. Since that devastating loss, he had dedicated his existence to relentlessly tracking and punishing all who perpetrated such heinous deeds. He sought not merely coin, but an unyielding measure of justice. Shadow Walker, though never uttering a single word, imparted his profound wisdom through subtle gestures and expressions, teaching them how to decipher tracks, how to navigate by the shimmering stars, and how to eke out survival in the untamed wilderness. Lady Serafina was not merely a victim, she was a woman of remarkable strength and unwavering courage who, despite the unspeakable horrors she had endured, clung fiercely to her indomitable spirit. She assisted them in every way she could, recounting details about the outlaws, their ingrained habits, and their nefarious schemes. She proved to be an invaluable source of intelligence, and thanks to her insights, they managed to circumvent several treacherous ambushes. Canyon Ridge loomed near, yet they found themselves encircled. The outlaws, anticipating their destination, had laid a cunning ambush in the mountain pass. Jake, spotting them, panicked and began to fire wildly, but Ethan restrained him. "It's futile," he declared. "There are too many of them." They were caught in an impossible bind. On one hand, Lady Seraphine's life hung in the balance. On the other, their own demise seemed imminent. That at that crucial moment, Marshall, who had already conceived a daring strategy, executed an unexpected maneuver. He ignited the dry brush, creating a thick curtain of smoke that obscured them from the outlaws' view. "Run!" he bellowed. They scrambled towards the canyon, but the outlaws, witnessing their escape, gave chase. The situation was dire. They were trapped, yet they had a plan. Marshall knew of a clandestine passage within the canyon, a secret known to no one else. "This way," he cried, gesturing towards a narrow fissure in the craggy rocks. Without a moment's hesitation, they plunged into the dark opening. The outlaws, seeing their quarry vanish, erupted in frustrated fury. They began a frantic search, but their efforts were utterly in vain. Inside the fissure, darkness enveloped them. The air was cold and damp. They were safe, but the palpable fear remained. They were forced to endure the entire night in that wretched confine, sitting in absolute blackness, listening to the muffled sounds of the outlaws desperately searching outside. Lady Serafina, clinging to Ethan, wept silently. Jake, leaning against the cold rock, mumbled incoherently under his breath, while Marshall and Shadow Walker listened intently to every sound beyond their hidden sanctuary. When the dawn finally broke, they emerged from the crevice, dirty, exhausted, but alive. The outlaws were gone. A surge of renewed hope coursed through them. They now had a chance to reach the town, to save Lady Serafina, and to put an end to the outlaws' reign of terror once and for all. Upon reaching Canyon Ridge, the weary group was at their absolute limit. The town itself proved to be as parched and desolate as Graves Creek, yet beneath its grim facade, a sinister life pulsed. Saloons overflowed with sullen men, while the main thoroughfare was cluttered with loaded wagons and horses tethered to posts. Marshall immediately guided everyone towards the sheriff's office. Sheriff Benson was an aged, white-haired man, his face etched with wrinkles like a parched riverbed, and his eyes heavy with weariness. "I know of you," he stated, addressing Marshall, "and I know about the lady. Her father has promised a substantial reward for her safe return." "We don't seek a reward, Sheriff," Marshall replied. "We need assistance. We are in grave danger, and Vulture King Silas's gang is hot on our trail." The sheriff nodded gravely. "I know Silas. He is a predator. But I am powerless to help you. My men live in fear of him, and we lack the resources to confront him." Ethan and Jake were stunned. They had believed that reaching the town would ensure their safety, but now they found themselves even more vulnerable. Their hope shattered. Their compassion for Lady Serafina intensified as they witnessed her bewildered expression. She, who had always possessed such fortitude, now appeared fragile and exposed. Ethan, seeing her vulnerability, resolved that he must do everything within his power to protect her. At that moment, Jake, ever the improviser, proposed an audacious plan. "If the sheriff can't help us, we'll appeal to the townspeople. Surely, they can't be indifferent to their town being under the thumb of outlaws." "No one will risk their lives for us," Ethan retorted, skeptical. "What if we promise them something far greater than mere safety?" Jake replied, a sly glint appearing in his eyes. They gathered the townspeople in the central square. Jake, clambering onto an old wagon, began to speak. "Listen to me, people of Canyon Ridge. Your lives, your families, everything you hold dear hangs in the balance. You cower before Vulture King Silas's bandits, but that very fear renders you their slaves. We are here not just to offer you freedom, but a future. We know where a great treasure lies hidden, but we cannot unearth it without your aid." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Faces turned towards him, etched with distrust. No one truly believed in tales of hidden riches, yet their inherent greed proved stronger than their fear. "We are not pursuing gold," Marshall declared loudly. "We are pursuing justice. If you lend us your strength, we will return Lady Serafina to her father, and he will richly reward you for your bravery." "And what assurances do we have?" someone from the crowd shouted. At that moment, Lady Serafina, who had stood silently to the side, stepped forward. She was pale, but her voice rang out, clear and resolute. "I am not merely the daughter of a wealthy man. I am an heiress, and I guarantee you that every person who assists us will be compensated. We are not seeking mere money, we are seeking retribution." Her words struck like a bullet. The crowd fell silent, gazing at her with stunned awe. Suddenly, Vulture King Silas's bandits stormed into town. They were armed to the teeth and exuded a menacing presence. Silas, a tall, muscular man with a long beard and chilling eyes, dismounted his horse. He strode towards the wagon where Ethan and Jake stood, a sneer twisting his lips. "So, you thought you could escape?" he taunted. "You forgot that in the Wild West, there's no place for heroes. Here, there are only those who take, and those from whom it is taken. You chose the latter." Silas, without uttering another word, drew his pistol and shot Sheriff Benson. The old sheriff crumpled, his body falling lifelessly onto the dusty ground. The crowd recoiled in terror. The bandits, seeing the fear in their eyes, began to pillage and brutalize the townspeople. "I'll offer you a choice, boys," Silas growled, his gaze fixed on Ethan and Jake. "You hand over Lady Serafina, and I'll spare your lives. Otherwise, you'll meet your end here, just like that pathetic sheriff." Fury blazed in Ethan's eyes. He was ready to strike down Silas, but understood it would be suicide. Jake, despite his fear, gripped his shotgun. Marshall and Shadow Walker assumed their fighting stances. They were prepared to battle to their last breath. At that very instant, when all hope seemed lost, 10 women emerged from one of the saloons. They were older, but their faces were etched with fierce determination. These were the local saloon girls, whom they believed no one respected, that they had overheard Jake's and Lady Seraphine's words, and they knew they had to act. "He'll kill us if we don't help," said one of them, named Belle. "But if we help, we'll have a chance at a new life," another, named Rose, countered. Without a single word, they drew weapons from beneath the folds of their dresses. They were seasoned marksmen and knew how to defend themselves. The bandits, upon seeing them, merely scoffed. They didn't take them seriously, but this proved to be their fatal error. Belle, who was the eldest among them, fired at one of the bandits. The bullet struck him squarely in the head. The other women, following her lead, began to unleash a barrage of gunfire upon the outlaws. With each passing minute, the number of bandits dwindled. Jake, Ken, Ethan, Marshall and Shadow Walker fought alongside these women, true allies forged in fire. They moved as one unit, a singular, unified force. Jake, who had always been consumed by thoughts of gold, now cared only for the safety of these brave women and Lady Serafina. When the brutal battle finally ceased, the lifeless bodies of the bandits lay scattered across the ground. Vulture King Silas, wounded, attempted to flee, but Marshall pursued him relentlessly and delivered the finishing blow. A profound silence descended upon the town. The people, who had cowered within their homes, emerged cautiously, gazing at the battlefield with stunned awe. Ethan, Jake, Marshall, and Shadow Walker stood alongside the 10 women, exhausted but victorious. Lady Serafina, stepping towards them, embraced each one. "You saved my life," she murmured, "and you saved this town. I will never forget it." In that moment, Jake, who had been obsessed with gold all this time, suddenly realized he had discovered something infinitely more precious. He looked at Belle, who smiled back at him, and understood that he had fallen in love. And he was not alone. Marshall, who had always been cold and detached, gazed at Rose, and a gentle warmth softened his eyes. Ethan, in turn, looked at Lady Serafina, and his heart swelled with affection. Shadow Walker, ever silent, offered a rare smile to one of the women, and admiration shone in his gaze. They had found not 10 wives, but 10 kindred spirits who, like themselves, had felt lost in this vast, often cruel, world. Canyon Ridge, once a spectral town, now vibrated with the vibrant hum of life. Its residents, emboldened by the extraordinary courage of the 4 cowboys and 10 women, tasted freedom for the first time in an age. The legendary battle against Vulture King Silas's gang became a tale whispered from one generation to the next. Ethan, Jake, Marshall, and Shadow Walker rose to become heroes, and the 10 women, once dismissed by society, found newfound respect and a place of honor within their community. After the shadow of danger receded, Lady Serafina swiftly dispatched a telegram to her father, and then, with Marshall's blessing, chose to remain in town, determined to aid in its reconstruction. "This town has given me a family," she confided to Ethan, her eyes devoid of any lingering yearning for her former life. "My friends are here. I want to help them build a new world." Ethan, who had always yearned for gold, realized that his heart was now captivated by an entirely different treasure. He spent countless hours conversing with Lady Serafina, and with each passing day, his affections for her deepened. He understood that their meeting was not a mere coincidence, but a destined gift. Jake, who had always been a carefree and impetuous soul, transformed beyond recognition. He began to court Belle, the eldest of the women, and their relationship blossomed before the eyes of the entire town. Jake, who had always viewed himself as a lone wolf, was now ready to commit his life to the woman who taught him to cherish not just thrilling adventures, but also the comforting warmth of a home. Marshall, a man whose entire existence had been consumed by the pursuit of vengeance, finally found solace. He discovered love in the gentle presence of Rose, and their relationship was tender and quiet. He understood that revenge offered no true peace, but love and family did. He was ready to cast aside his former life and embark on a new chapter. Shadow Walker, who had never uttered a word, found his happiness with Willow. She, like him, was a woman of quiet demeanor, yet their communication transcended the need for spoken language. They understood each other with a single glance, a mere touch. They were like 2 inseparable halves of a whole. Lady Seraphine's father, informed of the dramatic events, traveled to Canyon Ridge. He expressed profound gratitude and, honoring his daughter's promise, generously rewarded every participant in the battle. But far more significantly, he extended an offer of employment to Ethan and his friends on his sprawling ranch in Texas. Initially, they, unaccustomed to a settled existence, regarded the proposition with caution. However, when they witnessed the 10 women they had saved become their cherished wives, their perspective irrevocably shifted. They chose to remain in Canyon Ridge, dedicating themselves to building a new town where every individual would be revered, and justice would reign supreme. They meticulously rebuilt the saloon, constructed a church, established a school, and even erected a small general store. The town began to burgeon and flourish. The 10 women, once ostracized by society, now stood as its very pillars. Years later, Ethan sat on the porch of his home, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Beside him, Lady Serafina held his hand, their fingers intertwined. They were profoundly happy. They had children, a loving home, and a family. "I never imagined I'd find happiness in a place like this," Ethan mused. "Happiness isn't bound by a place, Ethan," Lady Serafina replied gently. "It resides in the people who surround you." He knew she was right. They had discovered not a gold strike, but something immeasurably more precious: a home, profound love, and a true family. The narrative of Ethan and Jake transcends a mere tale of Wild West escapades and perils. It is a profound parable illustrating that genuine treasures are not interred beneath the earth. They reside, instead, within the depths of our own beings. An alliance is a profound gift we unearth when we shed our preconceived notions and begin to perceive others not as adversaries, but as invaluable potential partners. Ethan and Jake stumbled upon not a glittering gold vein, but 10 devoted wives who illuminated the true meaning of their lives. Marshall, a man once consumed by the fires of vengeance, ultimately discovered solace and profound affection. Shadow Walker, the solitary indigenous man, found his destined counterpart. Inspiration is a potent force, both given and received, that blossoms when we bravely embrace risk. Jake, whose life had been an incessant pursuit of adventure, ultimately discovered his true calling in selflessly aiding others. Lady Serafina, who began her journey as a victim, transformed into a powerful leader, igniting the spirit of an entire town. For those 65 and over, this narrative offers a timeless lesson. It is never too late to embark on a new chapter, to unearth love, and to embrace genuine happiness. It underscores the profound truth that in life, the invaluable treasures are not material possessions, but the sacred bonds of family, steadfast friendship, and unwavering love. Do not cower from taking calculated risks, and dare to place your trust in others, for true riches are only unveiled when we courageously open our hearts. For youth, in a contemporary world often swayed by the allure of material wealth and fleeting values, it remains imperative to remember that authentic prosperity resides in the depth and quality of our human connections. As to the pursuit of facile shortcuts, cherish the bonds of friendship, the embrace of love, and the bedrock of family. And always remember, even if your journey commences with empty pockets, you possess the boundless capacity to conclude your life with a heart overflowing with true gold.